Welcome back everybody to another video where I talk about bustle theory. So if you haven't seen any of my bustle theory videos before, this is where I sit on the floor and I talk to you about bustle related items. This is geared towards bridal seamstresses specifically. If you're a bride and you just want to learn how we do what we're doing back here, that's cool too. You're welcome to sit and listen. Bustles are one of the most important tools for maintaining the backside of the dress during the dance portion, reception time of a wedding. The goals of it are to get the dress up off the floor and also to look nice. That's what I wanted to discuss specifically today was the part where the accuracy meets the artistry. We've all talked about bad bustles and what ugly bustles look like, but what makes a good bustle good? And there's a concept of measurement and balance in graphic design called kerning, where it talks about the relationship of the spacing between two letters. Because some letters take up more space, like a W and an I, this takes up very little space and this takes up a lot of space. So it's talking about the distance between the two, and that relationship requires discernment for a graphic designer. So very similarly to that concept, we as bridal seamstresses, when installing a bustle, need to discern if something looks proportional, if it looks good. And that's where those two concepts of accuracy and artistry really come together, because a bustle can be accurate but not artistic and balanced, or it could be artistic and balanced but it's not accurate. It's dragging all over the floor looking crazy. So what we're looking for is that perfect combination of those two concepts. And we could apply any number of design principles here. I'm sure we've all heard of Fibonacci and all the different types of relationships that exist out there to describe perfect numbers or perfect symmetry or perfect balanced asymmetry. All of those concepts could apply to your bustle. It just depends on what your background is and what looks good to your eyes. Now, some caveats before we begin. This dress is a sample dress. This is not on a real person, so I have that kind of against me. There's no butt, no shoes. Second one is that I also don't have a bride here for an opinion. I usually use feedback from the bride to guide my direction as I'm proceeding through the bustle process. I like to show brides several different options, but that's okay because today we're just specifically going to talk about spacing. And we don't really need anybody's opinion for that per se. That being said, this is a very heavily subjective area, and that's why bad bustles do exist, because somebody thought they looked nice. Nobody out there is out to say, let's do an ugly bustle today. There's no seamstress is out to do that. So at some point, someone thought that bustle looked good and the bride didn't know better or thought it looked good too, and they went with it. So at the end of the day, it's whatever your bride says, but you want to provide them the best experience that you can. And so that's where this concept of discernment on the spacing, I think, is really helpful. And just let's talk about it. You know, it's a good thing to talk about. So let's get up into the action. Now, this style of dress is not one that's super common right now. It's just what I have to use. So I'm seeing a lot of mermaids, so I'll probably go over some of these concepts with mermaids specifically, but these still apply to everything. Design principles always apply to everything. They're not just for one scenario necessarily, unless they're specific for a certain discipline. Let's get started here. So the goal of any bustle is to get it up off the floor, and the first point is always at the center back. So you always want to start lifting from there and see what goes good. Now, depending on the situation, the bride might want a little bit of a sweep down at the bottom so that there's just a tiny bit of a mini train. That's going to be up to her discernment. I'm going to go just to the floor. And now also we're going to assume up here that this is a perfect straight waist because this doesn't fit my mannequin. We're just going to assume that that's good. Okay, so the first thing here is to decide if this is good as a single point bustle or not. Some brides will be on a budget and they don't want to spend a lot of money on multiple points. However, this dress is very heavy. So if the bride only wants a very simple bustle, My discernment tells me that I might want to do 2 points instead of a single. So I could just do her a single point like this. The other thing that I risk though, well, you can see this is very heavy even just for my pin. And this, oop, that's just me being crazy. The other thing is the sides being controlled or not. So we can also provide the bride with a lot of control based on how many points are here. And this isn't bad. This isn't bad at all. Don't get me wrong. At this point, I would see how this feels on her and how it looks, but I still might go ahead and do 2 points. Or at the very minimum, I would do a supporting point down here, like halfway. I would do a supporting point here that's hidden. If she really likes the look of a single point bustle. Some brides, I think, like the idea of a single point because it looks uncomplicated and easy. And if that's the case, just make sure that it looks like a single point when you're done. So that might be a good option. And it still looks the same on the outside. Still looks like a single point, but you know you've got 2 anchors there holding it in place. Love my pins today. We're filming a video. Can you play nice? So that's an option for this dress. And that's pretty normal as far as American bustles go. Now, if she's wanting something a little larger or a little bit more off the ground, that's when I would move to some secondary points. Let's see if we can actually get this up here. Tuck this in onto the side. Okay. There we go. Clear as mud. Okay. So let's say she wanted to address these. These are what I lovingly call wings. So they can pop out when you don't want them to and look crazy. And so how we address the wings proportionally is obviously to address both of them because there's 2. So you can handle these in a number of ways. You can either sew a piece of ribbon from this point to this point under the dress and then tie it behind. I'm gonna pin that so you can see what I mean. And this just helps refine. That's really the goal of what we're talking about today. Proportionally, we want to refine what we already know. And then you can spread out the dress on top of it. Again, pretend this looks good up here. She's fighting me. There we go. So you see how it just holds those wings back a little bit more and kind of controls that? That's going to give you a little bit more polish, and you charge that as another point. So she could essentially have 4 points then. She would have these 2 and then these 2 points happen to pull together underneath. So that's an option. Let's switch these over. If she wanted to pick these up. Now the zipper is actually going to control how much I can do here on this particular dress because it's sewn down very far. So some brides will come in and they're very particular. They want a certain look. They want the 3 fluffy points. I do see a lot of this happening, and I wanted to talk about this specifically. Sorry, and you can't hear me so good when I face the wall. I see a lot of seam to seam, and seam to seam can be really helpful, but not always. So let's show seam to seam. I do feel like this is a very traditional way to put a bustle up, and it's not bad, but it can create some volume that's kind of unusual. So you'll just need to see this on your bride. This is where not having hips on a mannequin is working against me a little bit, because this actually looks kind of good right now, but this mannequin has no hips. So this might stick out really terribly on someone. And then also you would have anchor points that are visible. So as long as she's okay with that, or if the dress hides it, this could be on a different style of dress or different application. and it would work just fine. So that could be an option there. Generally seam to seam is too far away. So this is where you have to look at each dress and decide what looks good. If you have a row of bustle points, let's say this was a mermaid style and you're doing them all like this is too far. So if you had them all lined up, let's say this was perfect at the bottom. If you just had these three, this is too far of spacing. So yes, it's balanced. Yes, there's three, and three is a good number for design, but this amount of space on the back side of a bride is gonna make her look wider. So what do we do about it? We move these inwards, and sometimes you'll have to find a new pickup spot because this might not work. Move this in like this. And again, I wouldn't do this necessarily on a satin dress, but we're just talking proportions. So you see what I've done here is we have three sections. We have her, and then we have the bustle. And that's gonna help narrow her out a little bit. And you don't necessarily need to tell somebody I'm trying to narrow you out or I'm trying to widen you or whatever. You just do it so that it looks nice, and then you carry on from there. But you see how that looks different altogether? Now this does stack up kind of high. And this is, again, with no butt in here, that still gives you quite a lot of profile. So if you have a bride with no butt that wants to have a little bit of a butt, this kind of will give some volume. So there's that. And again, like I said, this is just my opinion of the scale for these things based on what I've seen over the years. So if you do seam to seam just like this, I'm not saying you're doing a bad job. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that you could bring a little bit of polish and refinement by not doing this all the time, because it doesn't always look proportional with what's going on. Okay, let's talk about French. So in the instance that you're gonna do a French, this one definitely has enough to do a double French, but let's start with a regular. Everybody always asks, where do I take the points to? Now, realistically, on this dress, you cannot go any higher than the zipper, because no one's gonna be able to tie that. It's gonna be a pain in the butt. So let's say we put our first spot right under the zipper there. Let's move this. And what I do to find this pickup spot, just to start, is I'll hold a piece of it up to the floor and say, okay, that's where that's gonna tie to. And then we can adjust from there. So this is the absolute highest this would ever be able to go on her and function properly. And then you can kind of move it from there. If her butt's right there, we don't want this to look like it's coming out of her butt, so you can move it down lower. These heavy satins, I love it. This is what I first learned on, and they're still always a struggle. So heavy. Okay. So we have that first one in place. So now the question is, where do the rest of them go? Do we make a line? Do we make a U? And the answer is either. So it's gonna depend on what looks good on her. I don't love when the line is too straight, and I feel like it can cut people in half and not look really good. So now this is one where I do want to pick up on the seams just so that I know that I can pick up something sturdy. So the seams of the skirt are the most strong and the best places to put bustle pickups when you can help it, but you can't always use them because sometimes they're just not in the spot where you need them to be. Okay, that's gonna do something. And I always work on the right-hand side when I'm pinning a bride because I'm right-handed and I want to see in the mirror. And then I'm gonna go kind of in the center of these two. So if you can see, this is center and the side. I'm gonna look in here, right in the middle, for my pickup. Now, as of right now, I haven't used any sort of measuring tools. I'm just looking at the floor as my guide. that's gonna look good. Let's take a look. That's pretty cool. Now, obviously when you sew it in, it gets a little softer. So that is an option. I don't love the shape that this is doing. I kind of think I should pull the point a little bit more this way, just to soften that. And this is where that discernment comes in, because you could use perfect rules and it would still look kind of funky, either with the fabric or, you know, the crinoline or something like that. So we still need our eyes to be helping do the work and deciding what looks good. That's not too bad for this side. Still don't love how this rounds out, so let me move that. Oh, there we go, that's better. So you can see I've created kind of a line that rolls down. That's definitely much prettier than how I had it to start with. Now they all work, that's the point of this. They all work, they're all getting the goal accomplished and getting off the ground and manageable. It's just what looks nice, what's balanced, what's gonna look good. Now, where this is positioned is the highest this can go, and it just so happens that this proportionally looks nice because we have 1, 2, and then 3. So there's 3 sections happening here. I'm gonna show you what happens if it's too low and it looks crazy. So, let's say we pick up right here. So this is about 8 inches lower. So if we pick up 8 inches lower, this is gonna stack all at the bottom like this. So let's not worry about the fact that we're covering up her lace right now, or the design, because that's not an issue for this tutorial. So we can figure this out though. This is still solvable. So if the bride really does want it this low, you can give it to her. It is possible. It's just very, very low and very heavy and almost has a deflated, I can't think of a nice word, kind of has a deflated trash bag, diaper situation. It's just not cute. The other thing that I feel like I'm seeing right now is I feel like it would need more points if it's this low to really like control it. So there's that as well, to really get this up off the floor looking good. If they really, really want it, if the bride really, really wants this, do your best to make it look good. So again, this is just half. So it would need more points to get it to roll out to the sides. But that's not terrible. It's just, again, design-wise, it's really setting the proportions from floor to, you know, ceiling, kind of off kilter. It still gets us to the floor. It's still technically bustled. You can install it and do nice sewing. But like, do you want your name on it? At the end of the day, if you don't feel like you want someone to tag you in the video on your bustle, then it's probably not where you want it to be. Okay, let's do a double French, because I feel like there's lots of questions on that as well. I feel like double French are so much fun, and you can really just go to town. So usually what I would do on this is divide so that I've got a couple little spots. Again, we can't go any higher than that zipper. I'm gonna choose a point that's, again, I'm looking at thirds here. I'm gonna kind of choose some thirds. I'm not measuring anything per se. You can fold it in half if you want to do that. To find your thirds. And let's just see from here. Okay. did learn how to do this using tape measures. And I feel like it's important to know how to use the tape measure, but I also feel like it's really good to know how to freeform as well, so that you can drape this as quickly as possible during your fitting. And that way the brides can see and approve it before they leave. So there's one. And there's two. Let's see. Oh, that's so pretty. Does anybody else miss doing satin dresses every so often because they're gorgeously shiny, like frosting? Is that just me? Okay, so that would be the first row. Oh, that's really pretty. So nice, even proportions. If I'm gonna ever do an unbalanced one, I'll leave the majority. I'll leave like a couple inches more at the bottom. Do I have a tape measure up there? Of course I don't have a tape measure right there. Oh, it's on the, hold on. Okay. So if we're gonna get tape measuring, so from zipper to bottom is 7, and then 16, and then 30. So that's what this is doing right now. So basically we have 2 inches, and then 9, and then 4. So it grew by 2 and then by 4. So that's kind of a cool little pattern that's built in right there too. So scale is happening. It just so happens the design looks pretty cool on that as well. So that's awesome. Now what do we do at the sides? Because everybody's like, what's happening here? So same kind of thing I was talking about before. Again, I'm gonna start with, well, I learned from the last one that using the side seam wasn't advantageous to me. It was all a little bit inward. I'm also gonna just kind of pick up and see what things look like. So I do this a lot during my fittings, and I always make a joke that I look like a cat because I'm playing with things. But this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a spot that has balance when I'm lifting it to see if this is on the right track. So I know I can kind of use this line as a guide for picking things up. Okay. And then, let's see. So right above that, here. And this is all about refining the shapes as you're going and building something that's beautiful. Okay, I like where that's going. And then I'm also looking for where the puddles are. So this puddle is happening here. I'm gonna kind of read what's going on. See if I can create something awesome. I think this one took too much up, so it's preventing me from doing something cool. Let's try there. Let's try this. And again, you're welcome, you can pin as many times as you want till you get a shape that looks nice. And then you're just gonna mirror it on the other side. Oh, that's pretty cool. I think this one's gonna need 3, or 2 more, I mean. So I think I'm gonna need to do 1 in the middle. Yeah, this string is a little bit wide at the bottom, so I think it's gonna need that. And then I'm always picking up with like a hanky. I wanna pick it up and see if that's a good spot, or if it's weird, and I can scoot over from there and kind of decide. Ooh, that's really pretty. That's kind of cool. Let's see how that pins. And this is why these take a little longer, so these should cost more, because you're definitely designing something neat. Oh, that's really pretty. So I like this style of bustle where it kind of undulates. Let me see if I can balance this one a little bit more. There, okay, yeah, that's cool. And that way she can fluff it up and have it be really like frosting-y. That's kind of cool. And then I would probably do, oh yeah, I would definitely do one more right here. And this is me reading the dress at this point. I've forgotten what we're doing and I'm just reading the dress. Okay, so that's pretty cool. This is definitely really fluffy, really frosting-y, and really cool. And then mirrored on the other side, this would look really, really awesome. I might take a picture of this after I double this up. The goal with this though, after you get it pinned and you like it, is definitely to unpin everything where you're at and use your safety pins to mark your pickups and anchors correctly. Whenever I'm draping, I do go fast with a single pin on each point, but you don't want to lose anything, so make sure you're putting safety pins on all your pickups. So I'm gonna hold my point very carefully. And this also helps me get a chance to check that I didn't grab too much fabric, because sometimes I grab with a gob and pin it up and then it's useless information for later. So there's that. That is super gorgeous, which is really fun. And then this one from the side is fluffy, but like it holds the shape of the dress out. So I feel like that's successful. That's on the right track for sure. And then it looks really ballroomy and fun down at the bottom, really dancey and fun. And you still get little pops of that. So that's pretty fun. So you can see, this is all subjective. The goal is just to be thinking about what you're doing when you're doing it, so that way you're really confident about your results. Because scale and proportion are super, they're intuitive. And when you see something that's poorly designed, you don't always understand why it makes you uncomfortable, but it just makes you uncomfortable and you're like, that doesn't look good, but I don't know why. And the same thing's true with bustles. Something can look really, really good and it just, you don't think about it further. And that's kind of the goal, is that we want to make it look so good and so proportional and to scale and all those good words that no one thinks a second time about it. They're not thinking any other things. They're not saying it's caught in her butt, or, I mean, shoot, I've even had brides with like 25 points on their bustle. They don't care that it's that many points because it looks good when it's done. So as long as the result is beautiful, that's really the goal. And you can see how much refining it takes to get to a stage where you like it. It doesn't always go the way that you think when you're working on it in general. But that's where taking your time at your fitting really will help you, is to build the scale in that you're looking for with each person. So I hope this gave you a lot to think about. I'm always available if you have questions on a dress that you're working on to get it that next level of polish. Like I said, make some bad bustles. It happens. When you're learning, don't be afraid to try something, because you're not going to know until you try something. And you can be open with the brides and say, I want to try something different. Let's try this. And then you just be like, oh, don't like that. Next one. Brides will almost always ask you what bustle you think is going to look best with their dress and for them. And you can show them what you think looks nice. But at the end of the day, it's whatever their opinion is as far as that goes. And then you help them communicate that a little bit cleaner, a little bit better. Again, by bringing some scale, bringing the accuracy and the artistry together, you can give them a really beautiful result. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope this brings up some helpful conversations in your sewing circles and, you know, amongst bridal seamstress friends. I think this will help everybody kind of level up a little bit more and enjoy making bustles. I know bustles can be really stressful sometimes as a bridal seamstress, because, you know, you want to do a nice job. And like I said, no one ever starts off to make an ugly bustle. No one wakes up and says, let's make ugly bustles today. Everybody tries their best, and so I think this will be really helpful to discuss just among us all. Alrighty, well, you guys have a great rest of your day. If you have any other topics you'd like to hear me talk about, bustle theory is obviously one of my favorites. But I'm always welcome suggestions on different topics of things that you'd like to hear. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.